Hey everybody, welcome back to another North Carolina Tar Heel basketball recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. It's been a while since we have jumped into the deep end with David Sisk, our director of our basketball recruiting, longtime AAU college and high school coach. David, you were very busy in May. I was promoting big time. You were at events in Memphis, Birmingham, and Indianapolis, all in May. Got a chance to see a ton of kids. And it just so happened that after that stretch, Carolina popped out a few offers from some kids that you saw. And we're going to hit on those kids, plus one that they've been recruiting for a while. You've seen multiple times. You talked to them, Koa Peat, and some of these other kids. So we're going to discuss 6 kids in this podcast, and we'll begin with Koa Peat, the one that probably most fans are familiar with since he's been on the radar for quite a while. You got a chance to see him, got a chance to talk to him. Tell us about all that, and then cap it with the latest on Carolina and Koa Peat.
Well, one reason we're talking about Koa Peat, you wanted, before we started, kind of went over who we would cover. And I think you can look at the recruitment by North Carolina in 2025 in 2 stages. Number one was the original offers, and then you notice that pretty much after the live period, there was like a whole slew of new offers. And that's kind of not what Hubert's done in previous years. In the last couple of years, he had, with Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, James Brown, he had guys, all ready in the fold earlier than what there are now. But also, a lot of these guys are that the original offers have come, are looking elsewhere, may not be as warm as what it was during the original offer. So I'm not surprised at all it went elsewhere because the pool was really kind of drying up. But the one big fish that they've been in with and still are is Koa Peat. Now, you got to remember right now, here in mid-June, and people ask me all the time when we did mailbags, people ask in the Four Corners threads, what about Koa Peat? What about this guy in 25, that guy in 25? We're really not going to know much until we get late summer after Peach Jam. The big things that we want to look for coming up, it's going to be setting up the visits, the official visits for the fall, late summer and fall. That will give us a better idea, and then lists will start to get narrowed. So what's going to happen, you're going to go through Peach Jam, you're going to go through the Adidas, their nationals, their championships, other shoe circuits. And then what you're going to get is once you get out of there, guys, like I said, they're going to cut lists. They're going to pick up, they're going to name where they're going to visit. And then you kind of go from there. The one constant with Koa Peat is that he's been heavily involved in North Carolina originally, and he still is now. There's a lot of contact there. I think Arizona is going to be in pretty hot and heavily, and I'm interested to see really who else is involved and really gets through this as a heavy hitter, just to see who the competition is. That's really the big thing I'm looking at.
Before we continue, just let everybody know, David is running a basketball camp this week, and he's at a high school where he's running the camp. And if anybody knows has Wi-Fi experiences at high schools, it sucks. So the Wi-Fi is not great. So David freezes up every once in a while, which is okay. It's better than
I'm sitting here in the principal's office.
You're in the principal. I've been in principal's offices before.
Yeah.
I spent more time than my mom wanted me to spend in principal's offices back in the day, man. David's in the principal's office. That's great. You'd think the principal would have better at Wi-Fi than that. It's terrible. But we can hear you fine. You're just freezing up some, but we're rolling.
And I don't know if it's on my laptop or what. I don't know.
We'll blame it on the principal's office. But Koa Peat, by the way, 6'8", number 6 player in the class of 25. Very quickly, what do you think of him as a player?
He is, I look at him and Cameron Boozer. sort of similar. They're really power forward, big three, but really power forward type of bodies. But Boozer probably scores and rebounds and has a double-double as easily in AAU as anybody I've ever seen. But Koa Peat plays a similar type of game in that it just never looks like he's stressed out there on the court. But his is a little different because he knows how to get what he wants, whereas Boozer can do it different ways. I think there's a more defined skill set or a way to score with Koa Peat. I think he gets to certain spots. Paul Pierce used to be that with Celtics. If Paul Pierce could get to that left elbow, it was 2 points. Peat gets to certain spots in that mid-range and knocks them down every time. And then he gets to certain spots on his drive. If he can get to his left at times and get you to overguard that and then spin back to his right, he sets you up perfectly. So when I look at Peat, like I said, I see an old school, traditional kind of four like Roy Williams used to have. But like I said, I see a guy that's got a certain defined skill set with certain positions on the floor. And you hear guys talk about getting to their spots. He's that guy. If he gets to his spot, he gets you set up in a certain way. There's just not anything you can do about it.
The rest of these kids are more recent offers. Let's start with Malachi Marino, 7'1" kid, number 24 in the class.
Yeah, and he's made a major boost, and I thought he was underrated for months. So you're talking about a guy that's gone from the 60s and 70s and the 20s. I think he's a five-star type center. Yeah, I think he is one of the top true centers in the class. You know, he's 7'1", every bit of it. But he can score with his back to the bucket, but he can step out too. He does a little bit of both. Great rebounder. You can imagine at his size, ultimate shot blocker. You kind of look at his frame, and I would look at Derek Lively. That's kind of who it's like. Now, he's not as springy and just electric in the open floor the way Lively was. He's more as a half-court player, better offensive player, better with the ball in his hands. But Marino's a guy who people are going to look at him and say, well, he's from Kentucky. He'll never get out of that state. Indiana's actually been the favorite for him. His girlfriend, I assume, you know how young love goes, you know, here today, gone tomorrow. But his girlfriend was a volleyball player, was going to Indiana. So, and like we said, who knows how long that lasts, but that's been the case for a while. And to me, if there was a kid that you would look at and say, okay, just his personality and from talking to him and just the way he is, a kid that might get out of that state, it's Malachi Marino. You would never talk to him if you and I don't mean this as any slight whatsoever, but if you heard him speak, you would not think he's from Eastern Kentucky. You might think I am, but you wouldn't think he was. He's, and I've asked him about that, and, you know, he's taking visits all over the Midwest, and now he's got a national recruitment. So Purdue, Indiana, Notre Dame, all those were, in there big time for him early on, taking a ton of unofficials. Now it's gone nationally. He really likes North Carolina. He understands the pedigree, a post player that's come out of that school. And, I think he's a guy that a number of schools need to be looking out for. I think his recruitment will be very interesting.
Real quick sidebar to him. One of the things that you've been most interested in seeing and learning about Hubert Davis was post Armando Bacot. How does he view the 5 spot? What does he want?
Yeah.
What kind of player does he want in the 5 spot? Can you glean anything from that with the interest in Malachi Marino?
Yeah. To me, Marino is by far the best post player he's offered since he's been at North Carolina. I've said two things. Originally, when people would ask me, well, what kind of coach is Hubert Davis? Is it a good hire? And I've said this, we will not know about Hubert Davis until really Roy's players to Roy era is gone. And here we are a decade later, and we still got R.J. Davis in the program. But, it was Baycott. Nobody thought Baycott would be there as long as he's been. And so much of it is centered around him. So the ability to coach post players, of a guy like Baycott, obviously is a no-brainer. The problem's been, I think, out developing a big outside of him, number one. And number two, maybe the evaluation, because I think, no offense to anybody, but I think all the bigs that they'd offered and brought in are kind of projects, especially on the offensive end. And there's nobody there with Baycott's type of talent. Marino's a different guy. Marino's a guy that can step in and play the center spot at anywhere in the country and be a difference maker and be a guy that you can win with at the 5 spot. So he's a guy that I think they would love to have. Like I said, to me, he's easily the best center that they've offered in the Hubert Davis era.
Two guys from my neck of the woods back in the old days from D.C. area, Caden Lewis, Sidwell Friends in Washington, D.C., 6'3", number 55 player in the class. You did a piece kind of introducing everybody to him last Monday, I think it was, and 2 days later he gets the offer.
Yeah, he got that, and he's got a bunch of offers here of late. If I had my phone out, I could go through them, but man, he's had
he had like 12 this past week, I think.
Yeah, and there's been several guys here since the end of May who just over amount of days. There's been a couple that have just blown up, just like a double-digit offers. And I'm talking big time, blue blood schools included, and obviously he's one. In fact, he's on as we do this, he's on a visit to Kentucky, and then he has the North Carolina offer. The interesting thing he's going to be looking for is who will let him play at the point. Now, he's listed, and I spoke to him Friday, and he's listed as a shooting guard, not only with Rivals, just about every other network. He doesn't see himself that way. He says, maybe I can say a combo guard, but I'm a point guard. Will want to go to a place where they will let him play on ball. If he plays off ball some, he can understand that, but he wants on the ball. And so I think Hubert's in the spot where he can say, hey, I played this balancing act with R.J. Davis and Elliot Cadeau. I've got more than one on-ball guard in the backcourt, and it's worked, and they've been highly successful. So if I'm Hubert Davis, I really play this into this dynamic of RJ and Cadeau being on-ball guards, playing together and showing him how that works out. And another thing about Lewis, you could tell he's extremely impressive, buttoned up, well-spoken, mature, beyond his years, and from what you tell me, that is really a prestigious school that he goes to. Yeah. So you don't expect anything less.
Yeah, you have presidents' kids that are high school age to go to that school. It's a very impressive place. Nate Ament. I'm not sure exactly the pronunciation. We get pronunciations when there's juniors in high school and they change when they're freshmen in college, as we've experienced many times. I remember back in the days when it was Bacote and not Baycott. 6'7", number 10 player in the class. Tell us about him.
Yeah, I like him a lot. And he was a guy who plays for Team Loaded out of Virginia, maybe the best AAU team in the country. And there's a lot of guys right there that Hubert Davis is going to have the opportunity to watch, because there's a ton of high major players on that roster. So Latrell Allman, who he contacted in 2026, we just ran a story. He's on that roster. Yeah. So they got a lot of top 40 guys, really talented. But he is a guy that I really like. that I kind of spotted out pretty easily, not because I know anything, but I mean, it was obvious, I think like the Supreme Court judge, when they asked him about if he could define pornography, and he said no, but I know it when I see it. So that's the same thing with a mint here. You know a good player when you see one, and he stuck out on a roster full of really good players. Long, athletic, explosive on both ends of the court, has a perimeter game, and a lot of these guys in this range are trying to develop that perimeter game more, so they'll shoot more from the outside maybe than what they should at the present, but it pays off on down the stretch. So he's one of those guys that I look at that, is really a high level guy. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Duke with him starting out. I think it scared some people off because they look at maybe Duke, but we're going to see how all that fits out, because now you start getting all these dynamics of where guys are going to go. So, for example, Boozer, you got the Boozer there. Who comes back? So the question you start asking, okay, these players, where will they go? Who's the favorite? They're waiting to see how these rosters even now play out. Who comes back? Who do they get out of the portal? And that's another thing going back to Lewis. He said one big thing for him is he wanted to see who we got some guys running in the background, tell his camp. So he said he wanted to go to a place where they don't over-recruit the portal. Well, Hubert Davis has not over-recruited the portal. He's just filled in needs. He didn't want to have to recruit or to go up against portal guys. So I'm sure that's going to be the same case with a lot of these, including a mint, who comes out of the portal, who stays, where does Boozer and Caleb Wilson and some of these other guys go, because these guys right in the 6'8", 6'9" range who have perimeter skills, they're the guys that go to Duke and North Carolina and some of these other high-profile programs.
I didn't have Supreme Court justice and pornography on my bingo card today at all, Mr. Sisk. That's pretty good stuff. Derek Dixon, 6'4", number 70. And when we're finished, I want to ask you a quick question. Remind me about kids signing in November, or maybe waiting because of all the how everything fluctuates late in the spring with all these programs. So Derek Dixon, number 70 kid in the class, 6'4".
Yeah, and he's with Team Takeover, who's tied for the best record in EYBL, and Team Takeover is one of the top, maybe the best program over the past few years in EYBL, and on the Nike side, we know is loaded. Which, you talk about your own stomping grounds. That tells you the talent that is in Virginia, particularly on the coast, from the Tidewater area on up, going through Washington, D.C. and into Maryland. Just, it's always been loaded with players, and nothing's changed. They had a chance. In fact, I was at Indianapolis during a live period. So Hubert Davis was there, Jeff Lebo was there, Brad Frederick was there. And I sent out a tweet that they were watching Jackson Keith with Team CP3. And the arena, the Pacers Center up there, it's not an arena. It's got one of those complexes. It's got about 8 or 9 basketball floors in it. There is a kind of a perch in the middle of it. Go up the steps. It's a really good place to watch games. You can watch a couple floors at one time. I wish I had a picture of it when they were up there, and I didn't. But they're up on the perch on the side facing that floor. So the floor ran right along the side, so they could watch, and all three of them were there. I thought they might have been watching CP3, but that was the game they got to watch Dixon, and it was on a Saturday afternoon. They were impressed with him. Takeover, a very good team. So you're talking about a guy, another solid, really perimeter, good shooter, athlete, probably underrated a little bit at the spot that he's at. So, like I said, a guy that they're going to watch a lot. They're going to watch him a lot in July. And like a new guy on this list, and we'll see how that fills out. who the teams are going to be. But, that's where they saw him. That's the game they saw him, and they really liked him.
6'8", number 40 player in the class, Nicholas Kamenia.
Yeah. California, strong shooter. If I'm not mistaken, plays on the Puma circuit, which is kind of a new one. We saw a couple of good players have come out of there. So we'll kind of evaluate how that goes. Like I said, he's on the other coast of California, but they got to look at him, in Puma, and he's been impressive, and he's really kind of dominated on that circuit. It's not quite the circuit that Adidas and particularly Nike are, and but they like what they saw during that live period. I think they were in Wichita that weekend, so we'll kind of see the same way. We want to see where the visits fill out when he trims the list to kind of see where that goes. I've been trying to get with him. Travis Graff, who I work with, has told me that he's a really good interview, and I've been trying to get with him. But these guys are in the middle. They've had Pangos camp. They've had MBPA camp. They've had Team USA. There's another one going on now. So, we kind of think about, well, June's a time down. June's not a time down, man. They're busy and traveling all over the country. So it's just hard to get in touch with these guys right now. To kind of I've called every guy on this offer sheet. I've called probably 10 times and texted, and normally they're pretty good, but they're just really, really busy right now.
Well, we're finding that some in football too. Now that all these kids are out of school and they're doing midweek camps and midweek visits, it's hard to sync up with a lot of the kids that have been taking OVs in football as well.
And, Andrew, it's kind of how times have changed, even with athletes, and we're talking about really good athletes that in football and basketball, they didn't have all this stuff going on in the summer. They were in the high school gym more working on skills. If you wanted to see one, and you could just drive right down there to high school and see them. Yeah. And so, and that's a case of everything. I mean, even kids are not on that level, but play local high school in sports, softball, baseball, basketball, football. I mean, it's nonstop now. That's one thing I've talked about with like the local high school coaches that I'm around, is just, how that's changed. If you play multiple sports, you're through with one sport on Saturday and you're out there practicing with the other one on Monday. So that's a sign of a different world.
Yeah, it was like that for basic high school sports when I played, because I used to have, they actually pushed back one year basketball tryouts to the evening because a lot of us had football practice in the day after school. So we go from there, eat an apple, go right into basketball tryouts, which is pretty wild. But now they do it. It's 12 months out of the year, basically. I wanted to ask you about the tryout on
Monday. We'd have a tryout on Monday. The season started on Tuesday.
Wow, that's wild. I wanted to ask you about kids' preference with the signing. Might they delay and sign later? But I want to save that for a daily drop because I want to single that topic out. I think we can get 10 minutes into that. I don't want to extend this podcast too long. So we're going to go ahead and cut this one off. We'll do that topic in daily drop. So be on the lookout for that one in one of our many daily drops that we continue to roll out every week here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. By the way, you can get access to all this information and a lot more on these kids if you sign up. And if you're a member of TarHeelIllustrated.com, it's just $8.33 a month, which is cheaper than just about any number in a drive-through restaurant. You cut out one of those a month, you cover the cost of THI, and trust me, David only gives you a little bit of stuff here on YouTube. We don't do a lot of recruiting videos here on the channel, so you got to be a premium member and you get a ton of information. And you could also participate in the many mailbags that David runs on our site. For David Sisk, I'm AJ. We appreciate you stopping by.